Hello and welcome to today's video. So in today's video I will show you how to make this beautiful bubu dress with an asymmetric neckline and a facing in front. Please watch till the end of this video. So for this video I will use this beautiful Ankara fabric, and also I have a beautiful green fabric for my facing or yoke. And for the Ankara fabric, I have 3.5 yards of Ankara fabric. So now I'll go ahead and fold my fabric for cutting. I'll be cutting the front and the back together. So I folded all of the I first folded by the yard. I have 3.5 yards of fabric, so I folded that into two, the whole 3.5 yards into two, and then I folded then by the length of the Ankara, which is Ankara is usually by 45 inches. So I first folded the 3.5 inches into two, and then I folded that two again into another two, making it 4. So that is how I folded my fabric. So after folding out, I ruled out my shoulder line, which is also the start line, and then from there to 10 inches is the sleeve opening. How wide I want the sleeve opening to be is 10 inches. Then the length of the dress I'm making is 55 inches, and I added extra 1.5 inches for hemming the lower part of the dress. On my shoulder line I will impute 21 inches, that is 7 inches, which is half of my shoulder measurement, plus extra 14 inches, which is the length of the sleeve where I want the sleeve to stop. I'll also impute the same measurements on that 10 inches line I ruled out, and the opening is that big because I will be adding an elastic band to the opening of the sleeve. I will also take 1.5 inches allowance for making a casing for the elastic band. I will add an elastic band to the hem of the sleeve. So I'll take 1.5 inches for making a casing for the elastic. So this bubu will have a kind of cowl at the upper part. So from the shoulder line I'll measure to 32 inches. I'll measure below my hip line. My hip line is 22 inches, so I added extra 10 inches to that, and on that line, the 32 inches line, I measured quarter of my hip measurement plus extra 5 inches. Then I'll impute the exact same measurement I have on that 32 inches line on the hem part of the dress. So I have a total of 14.75 inches. I will impute that on the hem of the dress and connect from that 32 inch point to the hem using a straight rule. And then from that 32 inches point, I'll connect to the 10 inches line, which is the opening of the sleeve. I'll use a curve ruler to connect from that 32 inch point to the 10 inches point I have up. So I'll connect in a curvy manner. I'll connect the points together. So I connected the 21 inches measurement I have on the 10 inches line to the 14.75 inches measurement I have on the 32 inches line. That's how I connected. For the back neckline, I took a neck width of 2.75 inches and a neck depth of 1.5 inches, and I connected. Then on the shoulder line where I have my 21 inches, I came down by 1.5 inches for the shoulder slope, and then I'll connect that. I'll draw that and connect that to the neckline for the shoulder slope. I didn't notice that it wasn't showing that the neckline is out of focus, so I'll show you what I did for the neckline. So for my neckline, I took a neck width of 2.75, 2 3/4 inches, and then I took a neck depth of 1.5 inches, and I connected just like this. This is what I did for the neck. I also added 1/2 inch joining allowance for shoulder joining allowance, and I'll rule and connect for the joining allowance of the shoulder. Note that the neckline I just made was is the neckline for the back part of the dress. So I won't cut out the neckline of the front for now because it's an asymmetric neckline. So I have marked out all the lines and all the points. So what is left now is to cut out the gown. I'm sorry that the chalk is not very visible, but when we cut out, you will see what the dress looks like. So when cutting out, when you get to the sleeve point, remember to make a curve at that 10 inches point. Make a curve just like I just did, and then cut out the sleeve. I'll also cut out the shoulder part. I'll also cut out the shoulder slope, starting from where I added the ½ inch joining allowance for the shoulder. I'll just cut out, and then I would separate the front from the back before I cut out the neckline for the back. So this is what the gown looks like. This is what it looks like. Okay, so I will separate the front from the back and then cut out the neckline for the back. So I've separated the two, so I'm going to just cut out. I'll make sure I have the 1½ inches by, that's 2.75 by 1½ inches for my neckline. So I will quickly cut out a facing for the back neckline. So I'll fold fabric into two and place it underneath the back. I would place it as shown, and then what I have to do is trim out I'll trim out the neckline as well as some parts for the shoulder slope, the shoulder part. I'll just trim that out, the same neckline like what I have on the fabric. That's what I'll do. I'll just trim out and cut out my facing. So after trimming out the neckline to be the same as the facing, I'll then go ahead and cut out how bold I want the facing to be. So from the neckline region, I'll come down by 4 inches. That's how bold I want. And on the shoulder, I'll also take 4 inches and connect these 2 points. These 4 inches I've measured out, and then I'll go ahead and cut out the facing. So that is what I'll use to turn the neckline for the back neck of the gown. So what I will do now will be to iron interfacing to this facing, and then with the right sides facing each other, I will place it on the neckline and use it to turn the neckline and also top stitch towards the facing part for the neckline. For the front neckline, I will open up the front part, the front fabric. Like I said before, it is an asymmetric neckline, and I'll make sure that the right side of the fabric is facing up so as not to make mistake. And at the center front, you see a crease, so I'm drawing out a line to make that visible. Because it's an asymmetric neckline, that's why the center front is important. So what I will do now is from that center front, I'll measure towards the right hand side of the fabric and the left hand side of the fabric 2.75 inches to make sure I have the exact neckline. And on the left hand side of the fabric, I'll come down by 6 inches. I came down by 6 inches, and from that 6 inches, I'll also measure 2.75 to make sure everything is straight on a straight line, and I'll connect from this 6 inches up to the neckline up. Then on the right hand side of the fabric, I'll come down on the neckline part. I'll come down by 3 inches and also measure to make sure I have 2.75 inches and connect up as you see me do. Then what I'll do now will be to use my armhole curve to join the 2 points, the 3 inches point to the 6 inches point on the left. Okay, I'll connect the 2 points together. So I would place the curve ruler the way I want and then connect these 2 points together. Please, when making this neckline, make sure that the right side of the fabric is facing up so as to make sure that the part you want to be shorter or longer is placed correctly. So that's why I faced my fabric up. The right side of the fabric is up before drawing out the neckline. So I'll go ahead and cut out the neckline for the front. So after cutting out the neckline, the next thing now will be to cut the yoke or the front facing. So I would cut out, after cutting my neckline, I will now have to place my facing on top of the fabric. I'll place my facing on top of the front part to cut out the facing or the yoke, but I will not be cutting directly on my fabric. I will cut on a paper, then I'll use the paper to cut out the facing or the yoke. So now I have my paper with me, and I folded it into 2 equal parts to have a crease at the center of the paper I have, so that the center now I would align it with the center of my front part. So I would hold them down with a pin and make sure that from the shoulder down of the paper I have at least 18 inches of length, and the width of the paper crossing each part of the neckline I have at least 4 inches. So that is what I have, and I'll trace out the fronts. I will trace out the neckline of the gown, the front part on the paper. And please note, if you're cutting directly on your fabric, make sure that your facing is facing the right side of the facing is facing up. That is, the wrong side of the facing is touching the right side of the fabric. So this is what I have. I'll go ahead now and cut out the pattern and draw out the pattern I want for my facing. So from the shoulder line, I'll measure 17.5 inches. I'll measure 75.5 inches of length, and then I would rule from the left side of the fabric. I would rule straight from the neckline, the part I came down by 6 inches. I'll rule to this 17.5 inches length, and from where that 17.5 inches length stopped, I would measure towards the left. I'll measure 3 inches. That's how wide I want the yoke or the facing to be after the neckline. So I'll measure 3 inches. I'll also measure from the shoulder slope line. I'll measure 3 inches all down to make sure I have equal measurements, and I'll rule a line across this point. Then from the center front as well towards the right, I will measure 2.75, which is half of the neckline of the front, and rule across it. And from that point, I'll also measure 3 inches all up to the neckline part, and also rule a line connecting the point I've made. That is, I have 3 inches on the right and 3 inches on the left. That is after the neckline. I will rule a line from the center front, from the center part of the fabric towards the left. I'll connect all the 17.5 inches point I made towards the left side of the fabric or my paper. Then on the right hand side of the paper, this paper is facing front, so this is the right hand side. I will come up by 5 inches, and then I would connect as you see me do. So on the right hand side, I came up by 5 inches. That is, the right hand side is 5 inches shorter than what I have on the left side. Then I would connect this point. I'll connect the 5 inches I came up by to the 17.5 inches I have on the left side. Please just look at what I did and you will understand what I just explained. Look at the lines and you will understand it better. So after doing this, I'll now cut out my paper. I'll cut out my paper and then use this to cut out the main fabric. So I have cut out my paper, but I still want the parts at the right side to be more curved. So I'll still place my ruler and curve it more, and then cut out the shape I want. So after doing this, I would unpin the paper and then place it on the fabric I want to use for the yoke or the facing, and then cut out the exact same thing I have on the paper. So this is my fabric. I'll place it right side of the fabric should face up, and I also decided on how I want the pattern to appear, and then I placed my paper on it. I'll just trace out the exact same thing I have on my paper. That is because I've added even the stitching allowance on my paper, so I'll just cut out the exact same thing I have on the paper on the fabric. After cutting out this facing, I'll remove the pins I've attached, and then I'll iron interfacing. I'll iron lightweight interfacing to both this yoke I've cut for the front as well as the facing for the back. I would iron lightweight interfacing to both of them. To tidy up the neckline for the back, I will place the facing on the right side facing each other. I'll place the facing on the neckline and then use it to turn the neckline and also top stitch towards the facing part. And then for the front part, I will place the yoke, that's the facing for the front, I will place it on the wrong side. Please take note, the facing will be right side of the facing the wrong side of the fabric. Then I will sew, top stitch towards the main fabric, and then turn it towards, I'll now turn the facing for the front towards the front side, towards the right side of the fabric. So I have turned the neckline and I've top stitched towards the main fabric, as you can see, and I've brought it out. Please, you notch properly, especially for this front part that has a lot of sharp curves, and I would turn it towards the right and then fold in 1/2 inches by the edges of the facing. I will then top stitch on these folded edges. I will top stitch on it. So after doing that, I will then attach the front part to the back part by the shoulder using the 1/2 inch seam allowance I left for it. So I would attach using 1/2 inch. I will sew the shoulders together. So after that, I will make the casing. I'll fold in the 1.5 inches I left for the casing for the elastic, and then I'll pass my elastic through the casing I'll make for it. So after folding in the space for the elastic, I have 18 inches of length of 1/2 inch elastic. So I'll divide that into 2 and use one for each sleeve, and then I'll pass it through and hold it down by the edges of this casing I've made. That's how I'll hold down the elastic on both edges. So after doing that, I will then sew the sides together using 1 inch seam allowance. I will also hem the lower parts after joining them by the sides. So this is it for the bubu gown with an asymmetric neckline and elastic by the hem part of the sleeves. Please give this video a thumbs up. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to my channel if you have not subscribed, and also share this video with your friends. See you in my next video. Bye.